Few people noticed me first. I was the man who listened more than he spoke, who observed before acting. At the company, I worked efficiently and quietly, never drawing attention. My wife, Amara, was different. She carried ambition openly like a banner. She wanted to be seen, remembered, and applauded. At home, she sometimes laughed and said I moved through life too calmly. I would smile and tell her calm was not the same as empty. She never argued, but she never believed me either. What Amara didn't know was that the company was not just where I worked. It was my inheritance. My late mother had built it alongside two partners, and her shares were placed in trust until I completed years of internal service and training. I accepted the condition willingly. I wanted to understand people before leading them. That evening, Amara came home radiant. Her boss, Mr. Kola, had praised her ideas publicly. She spoke of him with admiration that felt unfamiliar. I listened, encouraged her, and asked questions. Later, lying beside her in silence, I felt something shift. It wasn't jealousy. It was the quiet realization that love, when misunderstood, begins to erode without making a sound. Change arrived slowly, disguised as progress. Amara began coming home later, always with reasonable explanations. Meetings, strategy sessions, urgent deadlines. I trusted her because trust had always been our language. One night at dinner, she pushed her plate aside and sighed. "I don't want to wake up one day and feel like I wasted my life," she said. I asked what she meant. She gestured around the apartment. "I need more movement than this." I told her some seasons were meant for preparation. That growth didn't always need noise. She laughed softly, not unkindly, but with impatience. "You're always waiting," she said. "Waiting for what?" I didn't answer. The truth would have sounded like arrogance without proof. At work, I noticed how Mr. Kola spoke to her. Confident, encouraging, promising access and recognition. When he spoke to me, his tone shifted. Polite but dismissive. As though I were insignificant. That night, Amara slept facing away from me. I stared at the ceiling, realizing that distance doesn't always announce itself with anger. Occasionally it grows quietly, fed by unmet expectations. Mr. Kola was admired because he never hesitated. He spoke loudly, made swift decisions, and rewarded loyalty publicly. People mistook confidence for wisdom. I met him briefly in the hallway one afternoon. He shook my hand, barely meeting my eyes, then turned his attention back to Amara. "Your wife is impressive," he said, as though I were a footnote. At home, Amara talked endlessly about the future. Promotions, influence, and the kind of life that demanded recognition. I suggested that growth didn't always need urgency. She frowned. "You're too comfortable being invisible," she said. The words cut deeply. I wanted to explain that patience was not passivity, that being overlooked was sometimes deliberate. But she wouldn't have understood. My silence had become evidence in her mind of limitation. That night, her phone buzzed after midnight. She smiled at the screen and turned away. I didn't ask who it was. Love, I believed then, did not require interrogation. But doubt had already taken root, quiet and stubborn. The first real fracture came without drama. Amara sat across from me one evening, calm and composed, and said she needed space. Not distance, she clarified, space to grow, to find herself. I asked if there was someone else. She hesitated, just long enough for the silence to answer for her. "I'm choosing myself," she said. "I hope you understand." I didn't argue. I didn't reveal my inheritance. I helped her pack. When the door closed behind her, the apartment felt hollow. I sat on the floor long after she left, wondering whether love should have fought harder, or whether dignity sometimes meant letting go without explanation. At work, the whispers followed quickly. Amara and Mr. Kola no longer hid their closeness. She moved through the corridors with new confidence, and he basked in the attention. I returned to my routine. Observing, learning, waiting. Some truths, I knew, are more powerful when revealed by time rather than words. Amara's rise was swift and public. New responsibilities, Amara also donned a new wardrobe. Praise delivered loudly and often. People congratulated her, admiring her momentum. I watched from a distance, equal parts proud and wounded. Meanwhile, the board began a quiet review of leadership effectiveness. I was invited into conversations few noticed. I spoke carefully, never revealing more than necessary. The trustees overseeing my mother's shares observed silently. An elderly board member once told me, "Your mother believed leadership was service before authority." Carried those words closely. Amara barely acknowledged me at work. When our eyes met, she looked away, as though I were a chapter she had closed too quickly. Mr. Cola's decisions grew bolder. Expansions without proper groundwork. Promises were made faster than they could be kept. Nothing illegal, just careless confidence. Amara defended him fiercely. She believed proximity to power meant security. That night she stood outside my apartment building for a long time. She didn't knock. She turned away, convincing herself there was no road back. Success began to demand more from Amara than she expected. Mr. Cola praised her publicly but corrected her sharply in private. He reminded her often that he had created opportunities for her. Gratitude slowly turned into obligation. She worked longer hours, cancelled personal plans, and apologized more than she ever had before. The imbalance was subtle, but it grew. I focused on my responsibilities. The board's concerns deepened. Investor confidence wavered. Mr. Cola blamed market conditions, then his team. One afternoon, Amara questioned him about a rushed decision. He responded coldly. "Remember who put you here," he said. The words followed her home. For the first time, doubt crept into her certainty. She considered calling me. Pride stopped her. Soon after, an email arrived. The email stated that an all-staff meeting was mandatory. Major announcement. Her hands shook as she read it. Pressure revealed character. Mr. Cola grew defensive. Meetings became tense. Decisions were made without Amara's input. Her proximity to power had not earned her protection. One afternoon, she found old documents on his desk, incorporation records, shareholder notes, and names she half recognized. My surname appeared more than once. Her chest tightened. She asked colleagues quietly about me. "He's quiet," they said. "But the board listens to him." That night, memories replayed differently. My patience. My silence. I refused to compete. The all-staff meeting loomed. She knew something irreversible was coming. For the first time since she left, fear outweighed ambition. The hall was full. Every department is present. The board sat solemnly at the front. Mr. Cola adjusted his tie confidently. The chairwoman spoke slowly about legacy, stewardship, and the dangers of mistaking speed for wisdom. Then she paused. She called my name. I stood and walked forward. "This company," she said, "was built to outlast ambition without restraint. Today we welcome the rightful executive director." She gestured to me. Silence fell. Amara's breath caught. Mr. Cola's confidence collapsed. I met Amara's eyes once, not with triumph but with sadness. The truth settled heavily, crushing every assumption she had built her life on. After the meeting, Amara waited for me outside. Her voice shook. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to be chosen without conditions," I replied. She cried, not for the company but for what she had lost. The board acted cleanly and lawfully. Mr. Cola was removed following the review. No scandal, just consequence. Amara resigned weeks later. She said she needed distance, from the company, from the memories, and from me. Months passed. Leadership felt heavy, not victorious. I rebuilt patiently, strengthening systems and restoring trust. Decisions were deliberate and fair. One afternoon I saw Amara again. She looked stable but quieter. "I think about it often," she said. "Who I could have been." "Regret isn't punishment," I replied. "It's understanding." I walked away without bitterness. Some lessons arrived too late to undo, but never too late to teach. Leadership changed how people looked at me, but it didn't change who I was. I still arrived early, and I still listened more than I spoke. The difference was that now, silence waited for me to finish before anyone else spoke. The company stabilized slowly. Some staff expected dramatic reforms and loud declarations of authority. I disappointed them. I concentrated on rectifying hurried expansions, rebuilding trust with partners, and safeguarding employees who had suffered from instability. Progress was steady, not flashy. Rumors followed me everywhere. Some said I had planned everything. Others said I was cold and calculating. I let them talk. People often needed villains or masterminds to make sense of their regret. Amara stayed away. Months passed without a word. I assumed distance was her healing, and I respected it. Then one afternoon, a junior manager hesitantly informed me that Amara had applied for a role in a smaller firm that partnered with us. She hadn't used my name as a reference. The irony was sharp but quiet. I approved the partnership without interference. Her future didn't belong to my past. Still that night I wondered if loving someone ever truly ends, or if it simply changes shape, becoming memory instead of presence. Amara's new life looked modest from the outside. The office was smaller than expected. Fewer resources. There was no applause when she entered a room. At first she struggled with the silence. Felt like punishment. But slowly something shifted. She was heard again. Not because of proximity to power but because of her ideas. Her work spoke without needing endorsement. One evening, she ran into an old colleague who congratulated her cautiously. "You left at the wrong time," he said. "You could have been untouchable." Amara smiled politely. Inside the word burned. Untouchable. She had mistaken safety for significance once before. Meanwhile, at my company, the board proposed honoring my mother's legacy publicly. I declined the spotlight. Instead, I suggested a mentorship program in her name, focusing on patience and ethical leadership. The press asked why I refused personal recognition. I said, "Legacy should outlive the face attached to it." That quote traveled far. Amara read it late one night. She recognized my voice in the words, the same voice she had once dismissed as small. Regret settled deeper, no longer sharp but heavy. Time softened the sharpest edges, but it did not erase memory. One rainy evening, Amara stood outside my building again, just as she had months earlier. This time she knocked. When I opened the door, neither of us spoke immediately. The silence carried years. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said finally. "I just needed to tell you I see it now." I listened. She spoke of her mistakes without excuses. How her ambition blinded her to quiet strength. She described her tendency to mistake urgency for importance. "I thought choosing power would make me feel secure," she said. "Instead, I lost myself." I didn't interrupt. Some confessions need to finish their journey. When she was done, I thanked her for the honesty. I told her forgiveness didn't mean restoration. It meant release. She nodded, tears falling freely. As she left, she said softly, "You never stopped being enough. I just stopped seeing." I closed the door gently, feeling no triumph, only closure. After that night, peace settled differently. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. Work flourished. The company grew responsibly. Employees trusted leadership again. Decisions were questioned openly. And that transparency strengthened us. Occasionally, I heard updates about Amara through shared acquaintances. She was doing well. Not spectacularly, but honestly. The kind of progress that didn't demand witnesses. One afternoon, a board member asked if I regretted not revealing my inheritance earlier. "It could have saved your marriage," he said carefully. I considered the question. "No," I replied. "Because then I wouldn't know if I was loved for who I was, or for what I represented." He nodded, understanding. That night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on how easily people mistake quietness for weakness. How often women are taught to perform strength instead of living it. I slept peacefully. Years later, the company marked a major anniversary. The mentorship program bore fruit. Young leaders who valued patience, integrity, and collaboration. During the ceremony, I spoke briefly. I spoke not about success but about mistakes. About listening. About choosing long-term impact over immediate applause. The applause was restrained but sincere. Among the audience, Amara sat quietly. She hadn't known I would be speaking. Our eyes met briefly. There was no tension now. Only acknowledgement. After the event, she approached me. "You built something solid," she said. "So did you," I replied. That was enough. Life continued, unspectacular and full. I found joy in small routines, in mentoring others, and in watching the company thrive without drama. Occasionally, someone would whisper the old story, about betrayal, about revelation. I never corrected them. Stories belong to listeners once they're told. Amara eventually moved cities. She sent a brief message before leaving. "Thank you for not becoming bitter." I smiled at that. Bitterness requires energy I no longer had. On my mother's Memorial Day, I visited her grave quietly. I told her everything. Not the success but the understanding. "I have it now," I whispered. "Why you taught patience first." The wind answered softly. At work, a young woman once asked how to balance ambition and love. I didn't give advice. I gave perspective. "Choose places where you're seen without needing to perform," I said. She nodded thoughtfully. Years passed. The company outlived trends and outlasted louder competitors. Occasionally, I wondered what my life would have been if Amara had chosen differently. The thought no longer hurt. What mattered was the person I became as a result of her decision not to choose me. Regret teaches differently to everyone. For some, it hardens the heart. For others, it strips away illusion and leaves truth behind. Amara learned who she was without borrowed power, without applause, and without proximity to influence. She learned the weight of her choices and the cost of mistaking visibility for value. I learned something quieter but stronger. The difference between being wanted and being chosen. She chose her boss over me, never realizing I owned the company. But the real inheritance was never the building, the boardroom, or the authority that came with my name. It was the patience my mother taught me. The restraint to wait. She instilled in me the dignity to keep quiet when revelations could have come too soon. I didn't win because I revealed the truth. I won because I never had to. And that, more than power, more than position, was the legacy she left me.